So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to wire a power supply for your Bitaxe miners. So this currently is a Meanwell LSR 105, if you can see that there. So that says, or basically means 100 watts and 5 volts. And it needs to be 5 volts because that is the system that the Bitaxe requires. So it will be moving over to 12 volts very soon. So you could actually get a 12 volt system and then use kind of like a buck converter to go from 5 volts to 12, or sorry, 12 volts down to 5. But right here, it's already kind of played out for you. So let me explain kind of everything that's here. Firstly, you have L, N, and then the ground. So these are going to be kind of dependent on what kind of country you're in. People name them different things, and that's fine. But then you have the minus and the plus right here. And this is where your Bitaxe is going to plug into. So you have a minus, so it basically allows you to have a minus and a plus for one and a minus and a plus for another. Now you could also split this out to give you, more access to another row of Bitaxes. For example, you could have minus and plus put together, split it out again, and then you could have two more. So effectively, you could power 4 Bitaxes, I would say. But to be on the safe side, I would only power 2 Bitaxes from this one at least, just because it goes up to 100 watts, and you want to leave around 80%, and that's kind of going to be your maximum. So with this, because it's 100 watts, the maximum wattage is going to be 80 watts that you want to hit. So factor that in. If you're going to be overclocking things like the gamma, that might get up to 30, 35, and that's kind of pushing it a little bit too much with these. So as I said, I don't really know what kind of people would name these. I guess this is live, neutral, and ground. And then these are just the positive and negative. So you have that there. You also have on the Meanwell, so this would be a tutorial kind of for any power supply that you're using, I'm assuming. But you do have a voltage, I wouldn't say regulator, but voltage up and down kind of twist that you can do. So there's a little screw in here that is a plastic screw, and that allows you to adjust the voltage going in. The reason, and it kind of says it there, plus adjustment, so voltage down is going to go that way, so clockwise. And the reason that it has this is because sometimes it's dependent on the wire that you're using to actually plug into everything else. So let's just say you had one system running, it might supply it with 5 volts, and then you have two, it might supply it with 4.9 volts, around that range maybe. And that's when you need the voltage adjustment to be adjusted slightly higher. So the supplying voltage is maybe 5.1 to split across the two. I believe that is how it works. And it is dependent on wire length as well. So your length from here over to your Bitaxe. So we'll resume on wiring this up in a minute, but I want to thank the sponsor of this video, Crypto Miner Bros. Since 2018, CryptoMinerBros.com has been the premier site for top-tier crypto mining hardware, earning the trust of miners across the globe. The prices displayed on their site cover shipping and DDP straight to your doorstep, ensuring no unexpected costs at checkout. They deliver to over 100 countries and even provide lower invoicing options to help you cut down on customs fees. Payment is a breeze with options like direct bank transfer or cryptocurrencies including Bitcoin, USDT, or Ethereum. With over 250 ASIC options, they stock some of the channel's favorites like the Bitaxe, the Bitaxe Touch, and the Avalon Nano 3S. Join tens of thousands of happy customers who rely on CryptoMinerBros.com for dependable hardware fulfillment, clear pricing, and a top-notch service. Check out CryptoMinerBros.com today, link in the description. So when it comes to wiring one of these, you are going to need, firstly, the power supply, which I'll leave linked in the description if you want to get that. You can get them on Amazon. You don't necessarily have to get a Meanwell one. As you can see, this is branded as Meanwell, but that's kind of what everyone uses in the Bitaxe community. You can also go ahead and get, the 200 version. So you can get 200 watts at 5 volts. Just make sure that it's 5 volts. Otherwise, you're going to have to do some conversions to actually get it down I believe they also make a version where it's voltage dependent, so they have a switch on the side that you can switch up and down the voltage from 5, 12, 24, stuff like that. So if you have one of these already and you kind of don't know how to wire it and you're looking at this video on how to wire it, you're also going to need some sacrificial kind of plug-in that you're going to use as well. You can get these on Amazon, kind of taken off as well, and it's going to look like whatever plug you plug in. I would say you can sacrifice any of them as long as they're a good cable to any power supply. So let's say you have a power supply for a laptop that's old or whatever, you can actually just cut that off, and you're going to want to cut basically about that much off. I personally would use kind of pliers that have that cut-in edge on it for the thick part, so cut up to here, and then use a scalpel past that to just finely cut these things, if it's going to focus here, to finely cut them and then strip it off. I'm sure there's loads of tutorials on how to strip wires on YouTube, so I'm not going to go through that. It's pretty simple. All you want to do is cut off the end. I'll show you what the end looks like right now. So we cut it off from here. So as you can see, that is the same core that's in there that's on here. So there you go. So that's just from any regular power supply that we found. And then that's going to come off to split out into that. As I said, recommend pliers or cutting pliers to do that. You can do it with scissors if you really want, just for the first initial cut. But then you're going to need a scalpel or some wire kind of trimmers to do the next part after that. So as you can see there, these screws have just come out because we actually took it off. So I'm rewiring this one just to show you guys how it goes. So you're going to need that one, which is going to plug into these three that you see here. Let's zoom it in. So these three, live, neutral, and then ground. And then you're going to need your Bitaxe connector. Now, if you don't want to buy one of these, but they do come on Amazon, I'll leave them linked in the description. It's basically a wire that goes from the Bitaxe connector into these two split off. You can alternatively, if you have Bitaxe power supplies which are encapsulated, for example, we'll show you one now. So if you have something like this, which is a kind of standard Bitaxe power supplier, you can just cut this part off. So you can cut from there off, and that will work, and then split the wires out. So it becomes like you have here, basically. So it would be this end, and then you just cut off your length to your minor that you actually want from the power supply, and then you can strip down the cables to get them like that. So very straightforward process for those, and as I said, that is going to go into the plus and the minus there. So I don't know what it's like in America in terms of the colors of cables that you have, but in the UK it goes brown, blue, and then the yellow and green that you have. So let's zoom that in here. So what you're going to want is something like this. So the brown would go into the L, and then the blue goes into the N, and then the yellow goes into the ground thing that you see there. And then from here, obviously that's going to be wired in. You would want to go for, let's move this down here. The black is going to go into the minus, and the red is going to go into the positive. Now, if you are wiring two of them, I suggest you kind of split that out. So you go black and red there. So furthest black and furthest red, furthest minus, furthest positive. And then again, you go closest minus, closest positive. Just so it spreads out. You could do it like this and then really stretch out the other two, but it just makes it easier if you cross them over like that and overlap them a little bit. So as I said, this is going to be right here, the voltage regulator and adjustment. So once that's all kind of wired in, what you're going to want to do is actually turn it on. So once turned on, it is going to show a green light by here. If you can see, there is a green LED here, and that is going to show you that it's actually powered on. And then from there, let's say that you want to turn it off, the green LED will show you how much power is kind of still in there. So if it doesn't turn off automatically, that kind of means it's still live. So I wouldn't touch it if you've unplugged the power supply and the green light is still glowing green. And a lot of people like to tin these or whatever, but personally I go for a wraparound method like we see here. I can't really show you it on camera because it'll kind of be fiddly because the camera's up here, so I can't actually just screw in and show you, but we will show you a finished product at the end. But that's kind of the wraparound method that we go for. So you take a screw like this and then you push it right there through the wire, so leave enough wire to go around it, and that should give you a good enough clamp when you screw it down, and some of the wire will actually screw around the screw threads and keep it in place. So one thing about obviously wires is they're going to heat up if they put current through it, and if it's not connected properly they could slip out if not tightened properly, so make sure that you tighten them as good as you can. And that's pretty much it in terms of the wiring. The only thing that you kind of have to figure out on your own is going to be the voltage. So when you're messing with the voltage, it is a very fine voltage adjustment. It doesn't really seem like there's any clicks. It's just a little turn to the right or to the left, and it's going to up the voltage a little bit. The only way that you're going to find that out is actually plugging a Bitaxe in and reading the voltage from the Bitaxe OS. And for example, let's say it's low, you might want to up the voltage of the power supply because the voltage is dropping a bit lower. Alternatively as well, if you are overclocking on the Bitaxe, your voltage will drop as you start to overclock. So maybe you start these at maybe 5.2, and by the time that it gets down to your Bitaxe, it's 5 with overclocking. So I'm not a trained electrician. That's mainly how I would do it in terms of upping the voltage right there. It also does depend on the length of the cable. As you can see, this cable is very short to the Bitaxe. If it's longer, that means the voltage is going to drop across the cable. To stop that, I believe it is to do with the AWG, which is on here somewhere, but I think it's just stamped in so you can't really see it. But you're looking for anything that's under, I'd say 20 AWG, and these ones that I've linked in the description are, I believe, 18. So these will be fine for carrying the voltage as long as they are short enough. So I actually have an example here. As you can see, 18 AWG, 80 degrees and 300, and that basically gives you everything that you need. So anything that's under 20 AWG, the lower is the better ones, but you're going to pay more as you go down in AWG. So let's get this wired up and then I'll show you kind of what the finished product looks like. We're going to put it back onto our board that we have. So we have a Bitaxe board, and then we'll show you what the wiring fully looks like and kind of how that plugs into the Bitaxes that we have. Now, another problem that you might encounter with the voltages is that, even I've encountered this, you have two different Bitaxes right here. However, one of them gets maybe 5.1 volts and one of them only gets 5. And I think that that is to do with the length of the wire. If you look at this setup, this wire right here is shorter than this one going all the way around to here. So the voltage drop on this is going to be less than that over there. Somebody can let me know in the comments if that is negligible, kind of the length that I'm looking at. But I do experience that problem sometimes, and I have to fiddle around with the screw in there to get it to work. So that is kind of my guide on how to wire that up. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll make sure to try and help you out. As I said, I'm not an electrician, so there's probably some smarter people out there that can help you, and I'm sure they'll help you in the comments. If you did enjoy this video, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this.